A marker hits the floor of a Harvard lecture hall. 180 people laugh at the woman it landed in front of. Even her. Professor Garrett Ashby says, pointing at the janitor in the back. Solve my equation. In 2 minutes I'll marry you on the spot. Pick that up while you're down there. The cameras are rolling. The live stream is live. What he doesn't know. She found his secret in a trash can 6 months ago. What he does know and told no one is exactly who she is. Because he read her folder 2 weeks ago. All 92 pages. This morning isn't a bet, it's a trap. She bends down, picks up the marker, and starts walking toward the stage past the mop bucket, past the laughter, past 10 years of being invisible. The clock starts. 2 minutes. The alarm doesn't wake her. She's already awake. 4:12 in the morning. 3rd floor, Harvard Science Center. And Nadia Ellison is standing in front of a supply closet mirror the size of a paperback novel, pulling her hair into the same bun she's worn every single shift for 10 years. Not because she likes it, because it stays. The mirror is small enough that she can only see her face if she tilts her chin down. So she tilts her chin down, checks that the tape on her glasses is holding. Left hinge, white medical tape, 2 layers, wrapped tight where the screw fell out somewhere between 2 and 3 years ago. Somewhere in the blur, her uniform hangs off both shoulders, 2 sizes too big. She bought it that way on purpose. Takes up less space that way. Under the bottom shelf of her cart. A calculus textbook held together with duct tape across the spine. A thermos of black coffee. No lid because the lid cracked, and she keeps forgetting to replace it. On a manila folder marked in pencil, small careful letters, inventory Q3. 92 pages inside that folder. Not inventory, never inventory. Mathematics, her own, written in supply closets and at kitchen tables and in hospital waiting rooms across 10 years. On the backs of requisition form, on the blank sides of discarded memos, on whatever surface was available at 3 a.m. when the idea wouldn't wait. 6 complete proofs across complex analysis. 3 of them resolving problems that other mathematicians have been citing as open for years. She has never shown it to anyone. She was never going to. She calls brother at 4:17. 1 ring, 2. Barely, Theo says. His voice is morning thick. 22 years old, and he still sleeps like someone who has never once had to set an alarm before night. Which is fine. That's fine. That was the whole point. Eat breakfast, Nadia says. Real breakfast, not a granola bar. It's 4 in the morning, Nadia. I know what time it is. I'm checking your bank app later. Silence. Then, yes ma'am, love you. She hangs up before he can ask questions. Before he can ask what she's doing today. Before the day can start being about her instead of him. It doesn't occur to him to ask. It doesn't occur to him that there's anything to ask. That's fine too. She zips her jacket, picks up the thermos, grips the handle of her cart, starts her rounds, 3rd floor first. Always 3rd floor first. The mathematics department offices are on the 3rd floor, and the trash cans is on the 3rd floor where it started. She's not stealing, she empties the bins. What ends up in her cart ends up in her cart. A discarded preprint. A napkin with a half-finished derivation. A whiteboard photograph somebody printed out and threw away because erasing was easier. She takes these things home. Sits at the kitchen table. Thinks. That's all it ever was. 6 months ago, there was a napkin in the bin outside Professor Garrett Ashby's office, 3rd door on the left. Yellow. Crumpled. His handwriting, she knew his handwriting by then. The derivation was line 3 of the Ashby boundary. And the mistake, the specific load-bearing mistake, was already there. Halfway erased. Rewritten in the same wrong way. He had seen it. He had crossed it out. He had decided not to see it. Nadia stood in the doorway of his office at 4:30 in the morning, holding his yellow napkin in her cleaning gloves, and understood something she hadn't had words for before. Not about the math. About him, she took the napkin home, sat at the kitchen table until sunrise. By the time the light came through the window, she had the proof. She folded it into the back of her textbook. She has carried it every shift since. Here is a thing about Nadia Ellison that no one at Harvard University knows. She was accepted to MIT at 19 years old. Full scholarship. Mathematics department. One of 11 students selected that year from a pool of 432 applicants. The letter came on a Thursday. She read it standing at the kitchen counter in their apartment in Dorchester. Read it twice, folded it into quarters, put it under the fruit bowl, started making dinner. Her mother was at her 3rd round of chemotherapy that week. Her brother Theo was 12. Their father had been gone 3 years. She enrolled anyway. 19 years old, First in her family, scholarship, and everything. Showed up on that campus like she was supposed to be there. Because she was. She did the work. She was doing the work. She was doing it at night on the floor of her dorm room, after spending her days on the phone with insurance companies and hospital billing departments, and Theo's school counselor who kept calling, because Theo had stopped turning in assignments. The end wasn't dramatic. That's the thing nobody tells you. How undramatic it is. How it's just a Tuesday morning and you're sitting in your academic advisor's office and you hear yourself say the words, "I need to take a leave of absence," and you watch him write something in your file. And that's it. That's the whole story. She filled out the paperwork, packed a bag, took the commuter rail back to Dorchester, started making dinner again. She got the job at Harvard 2 months later. She has thought about the irony of this over the years. Not bitterly. Not anymore. Just the way you think about a joke so old it stopped being funny and started being simply true. She couldn't afford to stay enrolled at MIT, so she came to clean the floors of Harvard. And somewhere in the gap between those two sentences is 10 years of her life that she doesn't know how to explain to people. So she mostly doesn't try. But here is what is also true. Her grandmother Cora taught her mathematics before anyone else did. Cora Ellison, now 82 years old, living in a small house in Atlanta on a street where the magnolia trees are old enough opinions. Cora, who passed her entrance exam to the teaching program in 1962, score in her group, and was told by a man behind a desk who wouldn't look at her directly that there was no place for her. No specific reason, just no place. Cora went home, taught herself more mathematics from a library textbook she renewed 11 times before someone told her she could just keep it. Found other things to do with what she knew, and every Saturday morning at the kitchen table in Atlanta she taught Nadia. On the backs of grocery bags. Brown paper, flat-bottom bags from the market, thick enough to write on without tearing through. Not advanced mathematics, not at first. Just, here is a problem. Here is how you look at it. Here is how you keep looking when the first answer doesn't hold. Ton ha con confe de dum? No, not that. What Cora said in the particular way she said things. The math doesn't need permission to be right, baby. It just is. You just have to be willing to look. That was the whole lesson. Adia has been looking ever since, in supply closets at 3 a.m., on the backs of requisition forms. For 10 years in the specific quality of isolance available only when no one is watching. She still carries what Cora gave her, folded into everything she does. And one more thing, tucked under the frame in her desk drawer at home, a grocery bag. Brown paper, slightly soft at the folds. A mathematics problem in pencil, the kind you give a 7-year-old. And at the bottom, in Cora's handwriting, when you know this one, we'll do the next one. And the next. There's no end to them, baby. That's the whole point. Now, Garrett Ashby, 30 years old, Peabody Chair of Pure Mathematics, youngest tenured professor in the history of the department, a fact he has never mentioned himself because he doesn't have to. The room mentions it for him. Son of an electrician from outside Columbus, Ohio. Not the background you'd expect looking at him now. The pressed shirts, the particular stride down hallways, the way he holds a piece of chalk like it's an object of consequence. He got here the hard way. And somewhere along the way of knowing that, he became the hard way for everyone around him. His entire career is built on one thing, the Ashby boundary, an integral identity from his doctoral thesis, published 9 years ago when he was 26. He has spent every year since constructing a wall around it, 2 textbooks, countless lectures, a professional life organized around the premise that this problem, his problem, cannot be solved in closed form. If someone solves it, the wall comes down. He knows that. Last night, his office, 11:47 p.m. He was going through the slides for tomorrow's colloquium one final time, annual lecture, the department's biggest public event, live-streamed, a reporter flying up from the globe, a visiting mathematician Vivian Strand coming from Princeton to chair the panel. He reached slide 4, line 3. The function is assumed to be continuous at the origin. He opened a new document, started typing the correction, redefined the limit from below. Watched the right answer take shape on the screen, sat with it for 30 seconds. Then closed the document without saving, went back to his slides. Line 3 stayed wrong. Because if line 3 is wrong, everything after it is wrong. And if everything after it is wrong, then the Ashby boundary is not intractable. It's just been asked the wrong question by the wrong person for 9 years. He can't afford that answer. He has spent 9 years being right, about being unable to solve it. How can I not be wrong about being unable to solve it? He went home, set his alarm, slept, which is either psychopathic compartmentalization or the specific exhaustion that comes from carrying a secret, so long it stops feeling like a secret and starts feeling like furniture. What he does not know, what he cannot know, is that 2 weeks ago, when he was in the third-floor storage closet looking for a spare projector cable, he found a folder on the shelf. Manila, penciled label, Inventory Q3. He opened it expecting what the label said. Found 92 pages of mathematics in handwriting he didn't recognize. He read to understand what he was looking at. He put the folder back on the shelf, and he spent 2 weeks deciding what to do about it. By this morning, he had decided. Hall G. Largest lecture hall in the building. 180 seats, most of them full. The screen at the front already lit. First slide glowing white and clean, the Ashby boundary. 9 years later. The integral itself, 12 feet tall, projected on a screen the size of a small stage. Nadia stops her cart in the side aisle, looks at the slide, goes very still, not surprised. She has known this equation for 6 months, known this specific wrong version of it for almost as long. But there is something different about seeing it at 12 feet tall. Something that takes a moment to settle. It's large enough to be undeniable. The colloquium opens. Polished applause. Ashby takes the stage, hands behind his back, that particular stride, and the room shifts the way rooms shift when someone with a certain kind of confidence walks into them. Good morning, he says. Today I want to talk about a problem that has for 9 years defeated every serious attempt at a closed-form solution. I lets that sit. My problem. The Ashby boundary. He clicks the slide. The integral expands across the screen. I've spent 9 years, 2 textbooks, and, I'll be honest with you, the better part of my soul demonstrating why this integral cannot be solved in closed form. A small smile. Today I'm going to walk you through the latest version of that demonstration. He reaches into his jacket pocket, pulls out a stopwatch, holds it up. Because I'm in a generous mood, I'm going to make a small wager. The room shifts. People sit up. Graduate students in the front row exchange glances. If anyone in this hall, anyone at all, can produce a closed-form solution to this integral within 2 minutes, I will resign my chair. He pauses for effect. I will hand them my office keys. And because I am above all a man of my word. The grin broadens. I will marry them on the spot. Laughter. He's enjoying himself. He is very good at enjoying himself in front of people. It's one of his genuine gifts. Now, before the Putnam winners get excited, he raises a hand. I don't mean the doctoral students. The visiting scholars can sit down, I mean anyone. His gaze drifts slowly to the side aisle, the undergraduate who snuck in to audit, the maintenance staff. He looks directly at Nadia. The room follows his gaze. Yes, open-handed gesture, theatrical. Even the woman with the mop. 2 minutes. Marriage proposal included. He clicks the stopwatch. Don't all rush at once. The laughter sharpens. The kind that has direction. Everyone in the room can feel which way it's aimed. He reaches into his other pocket, pulls out a marker, and drops it. Not hands it, not extends it toward her. Drops it on the floor in front of her cart. 3 people in the front row laugh at this. 3 people in the front row who will not be comfortable with themselves later. Nadia looks at the marker on the floor, then at the screen, the equation. 12 feet of wrong, lined glowing white on black, clean as a headline, obvious as a bruise if you know where to look. She knows where to look. She has known for 6 months. Here is the internal calculation Nadia Ellison runs in approximately 4 seconds. Option 1. Leave. Take the cart. Finish the rounds. Go home. Let the folder stay where it is. Let the math die in the supply closet like she always knew it would. Safe. Invisible. Finished. Option 2. She bends down, picks up the marker, doesn't look at Ashby, looks at the equation, and starts walking. The camera operator swings to follow her on instinct alone. The live stream viewer count at this moment, 83 people watching from wherever people watch things at 9 in the morning on a Friday. Audra Sims, reporter Globe, row 3, sets her pet down. Soren Vall, doctoral student, front row, Ashby's own graduate student, goes very still in his chair. Ashby turns at the sound of footsteps and sees Nadia walking toward his stage. His smile spreads, because he thinks this is still the joke. He thinks she's going to stand there, confused or frightened, long enough for the room to find it funny. And that will be the story. Maintenance woman took the dare, couldn't do it. The bet stands sand. Everyone goes home having witnessed a charming piece theater. He does not know who she is. He read 92 pages of her work 2 weeks ago and still does not know who she is. That is the whole problem. Oh, this is fantastic, he says, turning to the audience. By all means, 2 minutes. He raises the stopwatch with a flourish. Nadia walks past him, doesn't take the marker he extends, goes to the chalk tray at the base of the board, picks up a fresh one, her own, turns to face the equation. She doesn't take the marker Ashby holds out. She goes to the chalk tray at the base of the board, picks up a fresh one, her own. She turns to face the equation, reads it top to bottom the way you read something you've known in a different context. The same words, the same structure, but 12 feet tall instead of folded into a textbook, and the difference in scales makes certain things clearer than they've ever been. She lifts the marker, goes directly to line 3, circles it, turns to the room. Her voice is low, even. No shake in it, no performance. Professor Ashby, on line 3, you've assumed your function is continuous at the origin. A beat. It isn't. There's a removable discontinuity, but only after you redefine the limit from below. The room inhales. Not loudly. The specific collective intake of breath that happens when something lands in a room of people trained to recognize when something lands. In the front row, Sorenval very slowly looks down at his notebook, then at the screen, then back at his notebook. His face does something complicated that has no clean name. Vivian Strand leans forward in her chair. Audra Sims picks her pen back up. Ashby laughs once, sharp. The laugh you use while buying time. That's a notational convention, Miss Ellison. Standard in the field. It's a load-bearing assumption, Professor. If line 3 is wrong, every line after it inherits the error. Even if, and I'm saying if, that were true, spotting an error is not a solution. The bet was for a closed form, not a critique. He glances at the stopwatch, and the clock is running. Nadia doesn't turn around. I know, she says. She writes a correction next to his line 3. Doesn't erase his work. Writes hers beside it in the margin, same size, same register. Like a second opinion offered carefully, taking exactly the space it needs. Here is what you missed. Here is the fix. In the front row, a graduate student exhales so hard it's almost a word. 3 people in the row behind him turn their heads simultaneously. Phones come up across the room. The live stream count climbs from 600 to 2,000. Then 4. The comments move too fast to follow. Nadia introduces the contour deformation, a small loop in the complex plane, labeled gamma, placed in the exact position she identified 6 months ago in the quiet of a supply closet. The placement opens a hidden symmetry in the integral that no one has found in 9 years, because everyone started from the same wrong line 3. Sorenval leans forward until he's barely in his chair. He whispers it like something confirmed. She's gonna use symmetry. He's right. She marks it with this triangle flag in the corner of the board. The front 2 rows react differently now. Not the involuntary standing of before, but something more internal. Faculty members lean toward each other. One whispers into another's ear. A doctoral student in the second row presses both hands flat on the desk in front of her, as if she needs to feel something solid. The room is doing the math with Nadia, silently, simultaneously, and the room is starting to understand where this is going. The stopwatch reads 0:44. Ashby steps forward. Miss Ellison. Even with the symmetry, the residual term is non-trivial. You don't have time. Nadia doesn't turn around. I have time. 3 words. The room does something it hasn't done once in the 45 minutes since Ashby started speaking. It releases. A wave of breath moving through 180 people who have been holding something in and have just, collectively, been given permission not to. Not laughter exactly. Something with more relief in it. The particular sound of a room, deciding which side of something it's on. Ashby's neck goes red above his collar. He looks at the back wall. The viewer count is climbing in real time. Thousands of people now. His face on every one of those screens. Move 4. The residue. Adia circles a single term and writes its value beside it. A clean fraction. No approximation, no irrational messes. The kind of answer that means the method worked exactly as she said it would. The 12-foot expression on the screen begins to collapse, even without any mathematical background. Watching from a kitchen bowl somewhere, watching from a hospital break room, watching from wherever people watch things on a Friday morning, you can see it happen. The expression that has filled that board since 9 o'clock this morning is folding in on itself, line by line, becoming something smaller and cleaner and more honest, like a statement that cost 9 years getting shorter. The stopwatch reads, Newt form. Move 5 the closed form. 1 line, everything reduced. fitting in the space between two margin marks, clean, complete, and true. Nadia caps the marker. 8. She turns around. 4 seconds of absolute quiet. Just the projector fan and the small hum of equipment, and 35,000 people on the other side of a camera, holding something they don't have words for yet. Then a single graduate student in the back row claps once, like he couldn't physically not. Then Soren Wahl stands up, and the row behind him, and the rows behind that, and the front row, where faculty members have been doing their own calculations this whole time and are now on their feet and not sitting back down, and the whole hall is standing. And the sound is the kind that surprises the people making it, the kind that comes from somewhere below decision, the kind that has been held for 45 minutes and has run out of ways to stay held. The live stream microphone distorts. The viewer count crosses 40,000. Nadia doesn't bow, doesn't smile. She walks toward Garrett Ashby. The room quiets in a different way than before. Not the quiet of waiting, not the quiet of held breath, but the quiet of understanding that something is not finished yet. That the mathematics was one thing, and what comes next is another thing entirely. She stops 3 feet from him. He looks like a man watching his house burn from across the street, still holding the keys. The stopwatch hangs forgotten from 2 fingers. His shoulders have dropped 2 inches since this morning. The confidence that walked into this room at 9 o'clock is still on his face technically, but it's structural now. The kind of expression you maintain not because you feel it, but because you haven't decided what to replace it with. She speaks 3 things, no preamble. You spent 9 years trying to prove this couldn't be done. She tilts her head slightly. You should have spent 30 seconds checking whether you were asking for a question. His jaw moves. Nothing comes out. Your boundary isn't intractable. She glances at the board. At the closed form sitting clean on one line where 12 feet of wrong used to be. It's been asked the wrong question by the wrong person for 9 years. A soft sound from the audience, not planned, just air escaping from a large group of people processing something simultaneously. Nadia takes 1 step closer. Her voice drops, not to a whisper, to the register of something that doesn't need volume to carry. About the marriage bet. Ashby looks up, and for half a second, visible to everyone watching because the camera is on his face, hope crosses his features. The specific hope of a man who thinks he is about to be spared. Nadia closes it down. I'm not going to hold you to it. Not because I lost. I didn't lose. Because I don't marry men I don't respect. She pauses. And, Professor, by how long you've been alone, I think you already know that's a list longer than mine. The room makes a sound that is not laughter and not a gasp. Something between. The sound of 180 people hearing someone told an accurate truth about themselves in public. Audra Sims writes both lines in her notebook, word for word, then sets her pen flat on top of the page, like a paperweight, like she's afraid the words will float away if she doesn't hold them down. Vivian Strand is sitting very straight in the front row, hands folded in her lap. The expression on her face is not satisfaction, something older and quieter. The expression of someone who has waited a very long time to watch someone do the thing she was never able to do. Nadia turns back to the board. Picks through his research, erases his work, not her work, his. The long derivation she spent 9 years defending. She wipes them in 2 long strokes, efficient, final, no ceremony, just gone. She sets the eraser down, doesn't look at Ashby again. Picks up her jacket from the hook on the side of the cart and walks off the stage. Now Ashby reaches for a folder, pre-prepared, thick. The kind of folder you bring when you've planned for contingencies. When you've known for 2 weeks who you were going to face this morning and have decided that if the mathematics doesn't save you, the biography might. He opens it, turns to the audience. His voice is up, louder than he meant. Before we get carried away, let me put something on the record. He holds up a sheet. This woman, Nadia Ellison, MIT Mathematics 2013 to 2014. Withdrew at 20 years old, no degree, no publications, custodial staff, Harvard 10 years. He looks at the audience, look at her, and then look at me, and tell me with a straight face that this is the person you'd have me marry. 2 people stand up immediately and walk out, deliberately, wanting the room to see that they are leaving. A woman in row 5 says audibly, "Come on." Audra Sims sets her phone down and covers her mouth. Soren Wahl stares at his own hands. Vivian Strand rises. Not fast. The particular slowness of someone very angry who has spent a lifetime making anger look like authority. She walks to the center of the stage. She does not look at Nadia. She looks at Ashby. The folder you are holding, Vishen says. Her voice is controlled in the way of someone controlling it deliberately. The personnel file. Where did you obtain it? Ashby holds her gaze. I have access to. You do not have access to personnel records. That access requires formal request through the provost office. She pauses. One beat. You will return that folder to the administration office before you leave this building, and you will not read from it again in this room or any other. The room is absolutely still. Ashby lowers the folder. He doesn't put it away, but he lowers it. Vivienne turns to Nadia, who has stopped walking, who is standing at the edge of the stage watching Mems. Ellison, Vivienne says. Her voice shifts, not softer, but different. The difference between authority directed outward and authority offered as shelter. You have time remaining, and you have a board. She walks back to her seat. Nadia looks at the folder in Ashby's hand, at the closed form still on the board, at the camera, at the 35,000 people watching from wherever they're watching, and she speaks. Not to Ashby, not to the audience exactly, to the camera, to whoever is on the other side of that small red light. Professor Ashby just told you why I left MIT. A pause. Not dramatic, just a breath. He didn't tell you the rest. Not as performance. The way you tell something true, plainly, because the plain version is the only one that works. Her mother, stage 4 ovarian cancer, diagnosed in the spring of her first year. Theo was 12. Their father had been gone 3 years. There was no one else. She left. She went home. She made dinner. I would do it again, says Takasta. The room doesn't make a sound. Not a cough. Not a shift. The specific way of quiet that means something is passed from entertainment into reckoning. And in Atlanta, Georgia, in a small house on a street where magnolia trees carry their age in their roots. Cora Ellison reaches off from her chair and turns the framed photograph on the side table. Her daughter, Nadia's mother, laughing at something off camera, the year before the diagnosis, turns it to face the television. Look at your baby, Cora says, quietly. Not to Theo, not to anyone living. To her daughter. Because some things you need to say to exactly the right person, even when that person can only receive them through a photograph turned toward a television screen on a Friday morning in April. Vivienne Strand stands up, takes off her jacket, the Princeton seal on the inside lining, visible, deliberate, walks to the empty chair beside the podium, lays the jacket across the back of it, lapel out, seal facing the room, then walks down the steps and sits in the audience, front row. Like a student who is here specifically to learn from someone specific. The message is not spoken. It doesn't need to be. That seat is yours. The board is yours. Finish. Nadia sees the jacket, sees Vivienne in the front row, sees, behind Vivienne, the young woman in the northeastern sweatshirt, who has moved from the back of the room to the floor space between the front seats. Knees pulled to her chest, both hands pressed against her mouth, watching like someone watching a door open that she didn't know was there. Nadia looks at the clock, 38. On the reset origin, the real one, she lifts the marker and begins. Mauve one. The polar transformation. Already in her muscle memory from 6 of midnight proofs. 3 lines. Fast. No hesitation. 3 faculty members in the front row mouth yes, without knowing they're doing it. Move 2, the contour deformation. Gamma. The small loop in the complex plane, placed in the position that opens the symmetry no one found in 9 years. Because no one was willing to start from a corrected line 3. Soren Wahl has stopped breathing. His chest is not moving. The clock reads 1:30. Ashby steps forward. He has to do something. He is a man who does things. He has built an entire career on controlling the terms of engagement. Ladies and gentlemen, loud, too loud. I want to remind everyone that correctness is not the same as rigor. What we're seeing is a performance, an entertaining one. But when this is over, I'd ask all of you, Professor Ashby, Hadia's voice. She has not turned around. You're using my time. The room goes to a silence so sudden it has texture. The silence of 180 people making a collective decision about which side of something they're standing on. Ashby says nothing else. Move 3, the hidden symmetry. The one that was always in the integral, waiting in the exact position everyone looked past for 9 years. Nadia circles it, labels it, draws the small triangle flag. The clock reads 1 now. Now Ashby reaches for a folder. Pre-prepared. Thick.
The kind of folder you bring into demands when you've planned for contingencies.
When you've known for 2 weeks who you were going to face this morning, and have decided that if the mathematics won't save you, the biography might. He opens it, turns to the audience. Before we get carried away, his voice is controlled. Barely. Let me put something on the record. This woman. He looks at Nadia's back. Nadia Ellison, MIT Mathematics 2014 to 2016. Withdrew at 20 years old. No degree, no publications. So custodial staff, Harvard, 10 years. He looks at the audience. Look at her. The words land hard, not because they're false, but because they're true. And he is using the truth like a tool designed for something else. And then look at me and tell me, with a straight face, that this is the person you'd have me marry. Two people in the front rows stand up and Wale, wanting the room to see. A woman, row 5, says, audibly, come on.
Lucreta says, nods, covers her mouth, says. Soren Ann stares as always. Vivian Rand starts to Rand smalled. Index finger barely raised. Vivian sees it.
Sits back down. Nadia does not cry. She stands at the board for 3 full seconds after Ashby finishes speaking. 3 seconds of holding still while the room holds its breath. 3 seconds that look from the outside like composure and feels from the inside like something harder to name. Because he read the folder, that's the thought that lands. Not the humiliation, not the folder itself, not what he said about her uniform or her resume or what she looks like. He read her mathematics, the real thing. 92 pages of proof. And his response was to walk in here this morning with a slightly harder version of the problem and dare her to fail at it in front of a camera. Not because he thought she couldn't, because he thought he could break her for first. She turns around. She doesn't look at Ashby. She looks at the camera. The small red light in the back corner, the live stream, 30,000 people watching from wherever people watch things. Her voice is even. Professor Ashby just told you why I left MIT. A pause, not a dramatic one, just a breath. He didn't tell you the rest. She tells it, not his performance. The way you tell something true. Because the plain version is the only one that works. Her mother, stage 4 ovarian cancer, diagnosed in the spring of her first year. Theo was 12. Their father had been gone 3 years. There was no one else. She went home. She made dinner. I would do it again, she says. Every time. The room does not make a sound. Not a cough, not a shift. The specific quality of quiet that means something has passed from entertainment into reckoning. And in Atlanta, Georgia, in a small house on a street where magnolia trees carry their age in their roots, Cora Ellison reaches up from her armchair and sees the framed photograph on the side tea table. Her daughter, Nadia's mother, laughing at something off camera the year before the diagnosis, turns it to face the television screen. Look at your baby, Cora says, quietly. Not to Theo, who's 4 miles away in Boston, sitting on his dormitory floor with his phone propped against his knee, not crying anymore, just breathing in the same world as his sister. Not to anyone living, just to her daughter. Because some things you need to say to exactly the right person, even if that person isn't in the room, even if that person hasn't been in the room for a while, even if the only way to reach them anymore is through a photograph turned toward a television screen on a Friday morning in April. Look at your baby. Look at what she's doing. Vivian Strand stands up, not fast, with intention. She takes off her jacket. The Princeton seal on the inside lining, visible, deliberate. She walks to the empty chair beside the podium, lays the jacket across the back of it, lapel out, seal facing the room. Then she walks down the steps and sits in the audience. Front row. Like a student who has arrived specifically to learn from someone specific. The message is not spoken. It doesn't need to be. That seat is yours. The board is yours. What you're doing matters. Finish. Nadia sees the jacket, sees Vivian in the front row. Sees behind Vivian the young woman in a northeastern sweatshirt who has moved all the way from the back of the room to the floor space between the front seats. Knees pulled to her chest. Watching Nadia with both hands pressed against her mouth. Watching like someone watching a door open that she didn't know was there. Nadia looks at the clock, 9:38. She lifts the marker. Move 4, the residue. She circles a single term and writes its value beside it. A clean fraction. No approximation. No irrational mess. The kind of answer that means the method worked exactly as she said it would. The 12-foot expression on the screen begins to collapse. You can see it happen, even without any mathematics background. Even watching Kitchen somewhere far from Cambridge, you can see it. The expression that filled the board since 9 this morning is folding in on itself, line by line, becoming something smaller and cleaner and more honest, like something being unmade, like a statement that cost 9 years getting shorter, Move 5, the closed form, one line, the entire thing, reduced, fitting that space between two margin marks, clean, complete, and true. Nadia caps the marker. The clock reads 0:18. She turns around. 4 seconds of absolute quiet. The projector fan. The small hum of equipment. 35,000 people on the other side of a camera, holding something. Then a single graduate student in the back row claps once. Just once. Like he couldn't physically not. And then Sorent Val stands up, and the row behind him, and the rows behind that, and the front row where 3 faculty members commit to standing for the last time, and do not sit back down, and the whole hall is on its feet. And the sound is the kind that surprises the people making it, the kind that comes from somewhere below decision, the kind that has been held for 45 minutes, and has run out of ways to stay held. The live stream microphone distorts. The viewer count crosses 40,000, and on a quiet street in Atlanta, Cora Elson, 82 years old, knees that have given her grief since before Nadia was born, standing because she stood up to turn the photograph and hasn't sat back down, closes her eyes. Breathes. There it is, she thinks, on the specific wordless way of someone for whom this moment at Mott connects backward, through decades, through a desk with a man who wouldn't look at her directly, through 11 library renewals on a textbook, through every Saturday morning at a kitchen table with a grocery bag and a pencil. There it finally is. Nadia doesn't bow, doesn't smile, doesn't do any of the things a person does when they've just solved an equation that has defeated everyone in this room for 9 years in front of a camera with 18 seconds to spare. She walks toward Garrett Ashby. The room quiets as she moves. Not by announcement, not by anyone's decision. The way a room quiets when it understands that what's happening next is not something to talk over. She stops 3 feet from him. He looks like a man who has watched his house burn from across the street and is still holding the keys. The stopwatch hangs forgotten from 2 fingers. The folder is at his side. His shoulders have dropped. The confidence that walked into Hall G at 9 o'clock this morning is still technically present on his face. But it's holding itself there now with that underlying structure that used to make it natural. Nadia looks at him, not with anger, not with triumph, with something quieter and more complete than either. The expression of a person who has arrived somewhere they have been walking toward for a long time and finds that the arrival is both exactly what they expected and nothing like they imagined. She speaks. 3 things. You spent 9 years trying to prove this couldn't be done. She tilts her head. You should have spent 30 seconds checking whether you were asking the right question. His jaw moves. Nothing comes out. Your boundary isn't intractable. A glance at the board, at the closed form on one line where 12 feet of wrong used to live. It's been asked the wrong question by the wrong person for 9 years. A soft sound rolls through the audience. Not planned by anyone. Used air, escaping from a large group of people processing the thing at the same time. Nadia takes 1 step closer. Her voice drops to the register of something that doesn't need volume. About the marriage bet. Ashby looks up. For half a second, visible to 40,000 people because the camera is on his face. Hope crosses his features, the hope of a man who thinks he is about to be spared. Nadia closes it down. I'm not going to hold you to it. Not because I lost. I didn't lose. Because I don't marry men I don't respect. She pauses. 1 beat, exact. And Professor, judging by how long you've been alone, I think you already know that's a list longer than mine. The room makes a sound that is not laughter and not a gasp and does not have a clean name. Audra Sims writes both lines in her notebook and sets her pen on top of the page like a paperweight. In the front row, Vivian Strand is sitting very straight. The expression on her face is something older than satisfaction. The expression of someone who has been waiting 40 years to watch someone not sit there, and is watching it now. Nadia turns back to the board, picks up the eraser, wipes Ashby's work in 2 long strokes. Not her work.
His, the wrong derivation he spent 9 years defending, and set the eraser down and walks us off the stage without looking at him again.
Behind her, Vivian Strand stands up, goes to the board, places 1 hand flat against the closed form, turns to the room. For the record, I will be referring this proof to the annals of mathematics today. Requesting expedited review, Ms. Elsison will be listed as sole author. Nadia is already in the aisle. She doesn't stop, doesn't turn, walks out of Hall G into the corridor. She is halfway to the door when she hears footsteps behind her. Almost running. She slows and turns. Soren Val, that's who's running. He stops 3 feet from her, out of breath. face wet in the way of someone who lost an argument with themselves about crying sometime in the last 10 minutes. He's holding something against his chest with both hands, the particular grip of something he's both afraid to drop and afraid to keep. A folder, manila, pencil label on the front, her handwriting. But not her folder, not the one from under her cart. She looks at it, looks at him, understands before he explains. I found the original 6 months ago, Soren says. His voice is wrecked, not performed, during the fire inspection. Cleaning out the third-floor storage. I was on the back shelf behind a broken projector. He swallows. I read it. On an EPS 92 pages. I went back every week and read what you edited the original on the shelf behind a broken projector, which means not her cart. She has been keeping her folder under the cart for the past 6 months. The version she works from, the version she checks every morning. But before that, in the storage closet, at some point, there was another version. Earlier pages. Things she'd finished and moved out of the active folder.
She understands now. The storage closet has been her archive. The cart has been her workspace. Soren found the archive.
I made a copy, Soren says. The original is still on the shelf. I didn't take it. I made a copy because I needed to be able to read it again, away from the closet. He looks down at the folder in his hands. I know that wasn't my right. Holds it out to her. She takes it. I knew what it was, Soren continues. I understood what you were doing, and I didn't say anything. His voice drops. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell you. I was afraid of him. I know that's not enough of a reason. I know. But I was afraid and I stayed quiet, and I am so sorry. He is crying openly now. The real kind. Nadia looks at the folder in her hands. Copy of her own work. 92 pages she wrote in closets and at kitchen tables over 10 years, now existing in a second version she didn't know about, held by a man who has been going back to read it every week for 6 months and said nothing. She asks the only question that matters. Did he see it? Not a question. Already knowing. Soren closes his eyes, opens them. 2 weeks ago, he was in the storage closet looking for a projector cable. He found the original on the shelf. Soren's voice is barely above a whisper. I don't know how much he read, but he came back to the office that afternoon and he was different, quieter. And 2 days later, he started revising the colloquium slides. Nadia is still. He changed the equation because of this folder. Soren nods. Very small, very slow. And now the whole shape of the morning is visible. Not a spontaneous public humiliation. Not a man who woke up arrogant on a Friday and improvised cruelty. A plan. Constructed over 2 weeks. A man who read her mathematics and understood exactly what she was capable of, and walked into Hall G this morning with a version of the problem surgically altered to close the specific door she was about to walk through. Not because he thought she couldn't do it. Because he thought the documented, live-streamed, irreversible public failure would exist in the record. And the record would say, Janitor, no degree, couldn't solve it. Not when it counted, not in front of the world. He was trying to bury her before she could bury him. She walked in anyway. She didn't know it was a trap. She solved it anyway. Nadia looks at Soren. He's waiting for judgment or anger or something proportionate to what he failed to do. Something that matches the 6 months he could have said something and didn't. I know what it costs to stay quiet, Nadia said. When you're afraid of someone who controls your future. He opens his mouth. She shakes her head. Small enough. Thank you for bringing it back. She tucks the folder under her arm. The specific angle, the specific pressure, the unconscious muscle memory of carrying something valuable in a way that doesn't announce its value. Turns toward the door. Voice. Different weight. She stops. Vivian Strand is standing alone in the corridor. No recorder. No notebook. No Princeton jacket. That's still on the chair in Hall G where she placed it with intention. Just a 72-year-old woman standing the way people stand when they've been carrying something for a long time and have finally found the right person to hand it to. Nadia waits. Vivian looks at her for a moment, not deciding where to start. She's already decided, giving herself one last second before the decision becomes irreversible. I owe you something, Vivian says. An apology. Something harder than that. She says it the same way Nadia says things. Plainly, because the plain version is the only one that works. I taught high school mathematics for 7 years after my undergraduate degree. In Ohio. Small district outside Dayton. I was good at it. I knew I was good at it. And in 1983, at 31 years old, I decided I wanted more than what the district could give me. I applied to doctoral programs. She says it without editorializing. Just the facts in order. In 1985, I was in my second year of doctoral work. Math? Not here. The same world, same rooms, the same particular quality of being tolerated rather than welcomed. Her voice doesn't shake, but there's something underneath it that has been waiting 40 years to be said to exactly the right person. There was a faculty seminar, weekly, required attendance. A tenured professor read my fellowship application aloud. Hadia is very still. My letter to the committee, the part where I wrote about why I wanted to be a mathematician, where I was honest about what the field meant to me. Vivian pauses. He read it for entertainment, not to evaluate it, not to discuss it, to give the room some to laugh at, and the room laughed. The corridor is cold. Cambridge is audible through the glass doors at the far end. Traffic, ordinary Friday morning, the world doing what the world does regardless. And I sat there. She doesn't elaborate. The specificity of sitting there, of choosing to stay seated, to finish the seminar, to not give the room the additional entertainment of a reaction, that specificity lives in her voice without being said. I finished my degree. I published. I built something large enough and undeniable enough that eventually the laughter stopped. I became the chair of a department. I have refereed papers and shaped careers and opened doors that were closed to me. She looks directly at Nadia. And in 40 years, I have never told that story to anyone. Nadia says nothing. Today is the first time I've watched someone not sit there. Silence between them. I'm not asking you to forgive that generation, Vivian says. I'm not asking you to forgive the version of quiet I chose. I chose it for reasons that made sense to me at the time. And I have had 40 years to decide whether those reasons were sufficient. She reaches into the inside pocket of her blazer, pulls out an envelope, cream-colored, thick, Institute for Advanced Study letterhead at the top. I'm asking you to take this. Nadia looks at the envelope, doesn't take it yet. You knew my name, she says, when I came to the panel table this morning, before I introduced myself. Vivian doesn't look away. I've known your name for 6 months. Soren mentioned the folder to a colleague at a conference in December. The colleague mentioned it to me. I came to this colloquium specifically to be present. A pause. In case you needed someone in the room with enough authority to make your yes matter. In case of what? In case you needed someone to say yes. Nadia is quiet for a moment. My grandmother tried to get into a teaching program in 1962. She passed the entrance exam. Highest score in her group. Vivian is very still. They told her there was no place for her. No reason given. Just no place. Nadia looks at the envelope. She went home and taught herself more mathematics from a library book she renewed 11 times before they told her she could just keep it. She taught me on the backs of grocery bags, Saturday mornings, kitchen table in Atlanta. A pause. I stood at that board today partly because of what she put on those bags. Vivian repeats the name quietly. The way you say something you're committing to memory. Cora Ellison, highest score in her group, 1962. 2 women in a cold corridor, 40 years between them in some ways. And in other ways, not 40 years at all. The same door, held closed by different hands in different decades with different language around it. The same quality of being told there is no place. The same mathematics waiting. Nadia takes the envelope. A visiting fellowship, Vivian says. Princeton, Institute for Advanced Study, September if you want it. Your own office. First year's time only, no teaching requirement. Just to work. Nadia holds the envelope. September, she says. September. Viv confirms. No ceremony, no handshake, no performance of the significance. They both know what this is. They both know what it cost to get here and what it will cost going forward. And neither of them needs the other to narrate. Adia puts the envelope in her jacket pocket, turns toward the door, pushes it open, and walks out. Good cold. The kind that arrives in your face before your coat is zipped and reminds you that you have a face, that you are a person standing in a specific place on a specific morning, and the morning is real, and what happened inside that building is real, and the cold air does not care about any of it, which is exactly what she needs right now. Adia stands on the steps of the Science Center, holds the folder, breathes. She solved the Ashby boundary in front of 50,000 people. She got a fellowship to the Institute for Advanced Study. She told a tenured Harvard professor on a live-streamed camera that she wouldn't marry him because she didn't respect him, and also that his sexuality was self-explanatory. She did all of that, in her uniform, with the taped glasses, and her cart is still in Hall G because she left it there. and she is going to have to go back in and get it at some point. And that is going to be a very specific kind of strange. She almost laughs. Almost. Her phone buzzes. Theo, she picks up. Yeah. His voice is the voice of someone who has been crying and stopped and is now attempting normal and not quite landing it. Nadia, I watched the whole thing. I know. I didn't know you were. I didn't know that you. He stops. A sentence doesn't have a clean ending, so he lets it go. Why didn't you tell me? She's quiet for a moment. The true answer is layered. She was protecting him the way she's been protecting him since he was 12. The mathematics felt like hers.
The only thing in 10 years that was entirely hers, not in service of anything or anyone else, and she wasn't ready to let it be anyone else's yet.
And under both of those, she was afraid. Afraid that saying it out loud would make it real in a way that could be taken. Afraid that visible has costs. She has always known visible has costs. She paid them this morning.
I'll tell you now, she says. Come down this weekend, I'll make dinner. Silence, then.
I'm already in the car. She goes still.
I've been in the car for 20 minutes. I'm on 93. You have class Monday. I know.
And you haven't eaten breakfast. I stopped at a drive-thru. She presses her free hand over her mouth. Something is happening in her chest that doesn't have a clean name.
Not quite laughter and not quite the other thing and not quite relief. All three at once, mixing into something that has no name but is recognizable anyway.
Drive safe, she says. I mean it. Yes, ma'am. She hangs up. Stands in the cold another moment, then goes back inside to get her cart. The woman at the side entrance, security, someone Nadia has said good morning to for 3 years, holds the door open without being asked. Meets her eyes. Once, the specific nod of one person acknowledging another person as a person. Nadia nods back, goes in, gets the cart, goes home. That evening, Theo arrives at her apartment in Cambridge at 6:43 p.m. With an overnight bag and a paper bag from the tie, placed 2 blocks from her building because he remembered it was her favorite, and he stopped on the way from the parking garage. She opens the door. He stands in the hallway holding the paper bag. They look at each other for a moment. Then she steps back to let him in and says, "You forgot to order the spring rolls." He looks in the bag. "I got the spring rolls." "Okay then." He comes in. She takes the bag. He sits at her kitchen table, the same kind of table she has always had, the right height for working, the kind of table that has seen a lot of late nights. And she gets plates and they eat Thai food, and she tells him, not the simplified version, the real one, all of it. MIT, the leave of absence form, the supply closet, the napkin in the trash, 6 months of carrying a proof she was never going to show anyone. What she felt standing at the board this morning. What she felt when Vivian Strand said her name before she introduced herself. Theo listens the way he has always listened to her. Completely. Without interrupting. With the particular quality of a chin. That means he is actually hearing and not just waiting. When she finishes, he is quiet for a moment then. "I should have asked more. You didn't know there was more to ask." "I should have asked anyway." She looks at him across the table. 22 years old. The boy she raised, who is no longer a boy, who drove from Boston without breakfast because his sister was on a live stream, and he needed to be there even if there was nowhere specific to be. "You're here now," she says. That's all. He nods. They finish dinner. He sleeps on the couch. In the morning, she makes real breakfast. Eggs, toast. The fruit bowl that's actually stocked because she does her grocery shopping correctly. Unlike Theo, who assists on drive-thrus and granola bars, regardless of what she says, and they eat it before he drives back to Boston for his afternoon class. He is almost to the door when he turns back. "I'm adding a math minor," he says. She looks at him. "I called the advisor yesterday. From the car, on the way down." He shrugs, but there's something in it that isn't casual. "I've been thinking about it for a while. I just needed to don't know. I needed to see something." She nods once. "You'll need to catch up on 2 semesters of linear algebra." "I know. I can help with that. I was hoping you'd say that." He leaves. She stands at the window and watches his car until it turns the corner. Then she goes to the kitchen, washes the plates, dries them, puts them away. The next morning, the Boston Globe runs it above the fold. Cora Ellison sits back down eventually. Her knees insist on it. They have been insisting on things for several years now, and she has learned to negotiate with them rather than refuse, because the negotiation is more dignified than the alternative. She sits. The television is still on. The Harvard livestream has ended, replaced by the channel's usual programming.
But Cora's granddaughter's face is still on the screen in some sense.
In the way that an image stays with you after the screen has moved on. In the way that you keep seeing something after you've stopped looking at it. Cora picks up her phone, calls her friend Ruth Ann into T. Cater, who she has known since 1963, who sat with her on that bus stop bench for 45 minutes in 1962 after the man behind the desk, and who has never once in 62 years of friendship asked Cora to be smaller than she was. You watching?
Cora says. I've been watching, Ruth Ann says. That's all. Neither of them says anything else for a moment. They have been friends long enough that the silences are as legible as the words. That's Ellison's girl, Ruth Ann says finally. That's my girl, Cora says. Another silence. You taught her that, Ruth Ann says.
Not a question. I taught her the beginning, Cora says. She taught herself the rest. She looks at the photograph on the side table, her daughter's face, laughing at something off camera. She hasn't moved it back to its original position and doesn't plan to. It's going to stay turned toward the television for a while. It feels right. It feels like the photograph needed to see this, and now it has. And Cora is not going to disturb that just for the sake of tidiness. When does she start? Ruth Ann asks. Princeton, September. That's enough time. Enough time for what? For me to find something decent to wear. I'm coming to that first lecture. Cora is quiet for a moment, then she says, You'll have to find your own ride. My knees won't do the driving. Cora, I have a car. I know you have a car. I'm saying I can't drive it. I'm going to drive us. Then say that. I just said that. Say it again, so I'm sure. Ruth Ann says it again. Cora writes September in her mind in the specific way she writes important things. Not on paper because paper gets moved and lost, but in the place where she keeps things she cannot afford to lose. September. Princeton, New Jersey. First lecture. She is going to need the dark blue dress dry cleaned. She is going to need Theo to check her knees will handle the steps. She is going to sit in the front row. She already knows this. There is no version of this in which Cora Ellison does not sit in the front row. She tells Ruth Ann good afternoon and hangs up and sits in her chair by the window and watches Cambridge, Massachusetts continue being itself through someone else's camera feed on her television screen. And she thinks about a kitchen table and brown paper bags and a 7-year-old girl who could already do long division in her head and asked why for everything. Asked why about everything. Never stopped asking why about anything. Where did that girl go? People used to ask when Nadia started working at Harvard instead of attending it. When she stopped saying much about what she knew or what she was thinking. She didn't go anywhere. Cora always thought but never said. She went quiet. There's a difference. You go quiet because the room got too loud about the wrong things. Because the asking got too costly. Because you learned that being visible has a price and you were already paying too many prices. And one more was one too many. You go quiet, but the knowing stays. It always stays. Cora knew this. She has known this for 60 years. From personal experience. She went quiet in 1962. She stayed quiet in a lot of rooms for a lot of years. And the mathematics she knew never stopped being true just because she stopped saying it out loud. She just said it to Nadia instead. On brown paper bags. Every Saturday morning. For long enough that it took. The afternoon light moves across her living room floor slowly. The way light moves in a house that has seen a lot of things and takes its time about everything. Cora watches it move. She is not in a hurry. She is 82 years old and she has been in a hurry for most of those years. And she has decided in the past few to stop. Things arrive when they arrive. They always have. Her granddaughter proved an impossible equation this morning in front of 40,000 people and walked off the stage and didn't bow. That arrived. September will arrive. The dark blue dress will be dry cleaned by then. She folds her hands in her lap and waits for the next thing. The Boston Globe runs it above the fold, not a sidebar. Not a feature buried in the science section. Hue sort by category. Above the fold, front, page 48-point type. Harvard Janitor quietly solved 6 open problems in complex analysis. The math department never asked it her name. Audra Sims filed at 11:47 p.m. Her editor called at midnight to ask if she was certain. She said she was certain. He said prove it. She sent the livestream link, the Annals submission confirmation from Vivienne Strand, and the photograph she took on her phone in the corridor. Nadia standing with the folder tucked under her arm, jacket half-zipped looking toward the door. Not posed. Not aware of the camera. Just a person about to walk out into a cold morning. He ran it. By 8 the next morning it's on every wire service. By 10, the Harvard Mathematics Department's main line has rung 51 times. The department administrator, who has worked there for 17 years and thought she had seen most things, has not yet picked up. By noon, 6 other papers have the story. By afternoon, the live stream clip, edited to the moment Nadia circles line 3, running through the closed form, ending on the 3 sentences to Ashby, has been viewed 14 million times. 14 million. In a hospital break room in Cleveland, a nurse named Dolores watches the clip on her phone. 48 years old. 12-hour shift started 3 hours ago. Her daughter texted the link at 7 this morning, and she is only now finding 4 minutes to sit down. She watches it once, then watches it again. She is not crying. She has not cried once through any of this. What she does after the second viewing is stand up, go back out to the floor, check her 2 patient rooms, update 12 charts, and attend the 2 p.m. meeting that runs long because it always runs long. She does all of it exactly as she always does, except when the attending physician in room 4 tells her, again, that she's probably misreading the data. The same attending, the same tone, the 3rd time this month. She looks at him for a moment before responding. A real look, the kind that takes its time. "Let's go through it together," she says. And something in her voice is different. She can't name what, but he stops interrupting. And they go through it together. And it turns out that she was reading the data correctly. She knew she was reading it correctly. She has been reading data correctly for 22 years. She doesn't say that last part out loud, but she thinks it without apology for the first time in a while. And that is something. That is not nothing. Garrett Ashby does not come to campus. His door is closed. His 2 courses for the week are covered by a colleague who does not ask questions because the department chair called personally. And the department chair's voice had a particular quality that made questions feel inadvisable. No statement, no press release. No comment to Audra Sims, who tried twice. He is at home. His apartment is on the 3rd floor of a building on Brattle Street. Nice building. High ceilings. A study with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves that he has been filling for 9 years with the specific pleasure of a person who believes that a certain kind of library reflects a certain kind of mind. He is sitting in the study, not reading, just sitting. Plus, the library is still there, and the books are still there, and the framed acknowledgments page from his 2nd textbook is still on the wall, and all of it is still exactly what it was last Thursday. And none of it means the same thing it meant last Thursday. And he is working through what to do about that. The 3 sentences Nadia said to him are not leaving. He has tried to argue with them. That's his training. You identify the claim, you locate the weakness, you construct the counter. But the claims don't have weaknesses. They're just accurate. She spent 30 seconds on each one, and all 3 of them are going to be true about him, long after this week is over. I spent 9 years on the wrong question. He spent 9 years asking the wrong thing. He knew the question was wrong. He knew it at 11:47 p. The night before the colloquium. He opened a document and wrote the correction and then closed the document without saving. And he chose the wrong question anyway, because the right answer was too expensive. He picked up the folder from the supply closet shelf 2 weeks ago. He read 40 pages before he understood what he was holding. He put it back. He spent 2 weeks making the problem harder. He tried to make her fail in public. She didn't fail. And now he is sitting in his study on a Tuesday afternoon while 14 million people watch a clip of her solving his life's work in under 2 minutes. And the particular quality of alone that fills this apartment is the same quality it's always had, except he can no longer pretend he doesn't know what it is. She told him what it was. In front of 40,000 people, he gets up, goes to his desk, takes out a piece of paper, actual paper, cream-colored. The good stationery he bought and uses rarely because most things can be emailed and he's the paper for things that matter. He writes 6 drafts before he keeps one. He is used to revision. He has revised his own work thousands of times. He is not used to the revision being in service of honesty rather than precision. But the process is not entirely different. He keeps the 7th draft. 1 page, short. The kind of short that comes from taking out everything that was protecting him and leaving only what was true. He addresses it to Vivian Strand, seals it, walks to the mailbox on the corner, comes back, sits down in the study again, picks up a paper from the pile on his desk, a preprint from Johns Hopkins, someone else's work, a question he hasn't seen framed this way before. He reads the 1st page, the 2nd, Something in the third page catches him. A framing he disagrees with, a direction he'd go differently. A question the author is circling without quite asking directly. He pulls a legal pad toward him. Writes the question, just the question. Nothing else yet. Looks at it. It has been 9 years since he wrote a question he didn't already know the answer to. He built his career on already knowing. On the answer being the premise rather than the destination. On certainty as performance, and performance as reputation, and reputation as the only currency that kept him from being the electrician's son from Ohio who didn't belong in these rooms. He looks at the question on the legal pad. He doesn't know the answer. He doesn't know if it's solvable. He writes a second question beside the first. Doesn't know that answer either. He is going to sit with both of them, for as long as it takes, without deciding in advance what the answer has to be. That's something he's going to have to learn again. How to sit with questions. How to let them be questions instead of immediately fortifying a position around an answer he can't afford to lose. It's uncomfortable. He writes a third question. October. The kind of October that makes New Jersey look like it was designed by someone with strong opinions about light. Gold through old trees. Leaves doing their annual extravagant dying. The campus of the Institute for Advanced Studies sitting in the middle of it, like a place that has always known it would outlast whatever was happening around it. Adia Ellison's office is on the second floor of Fold Hall. Her name is on the door in small letters. She traced him with one finger on her first morning and felt embarrassed about it, and then decided she wasn't embarrassed about it. They are her name, on a door, at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, New Jersey. She is allowed to touch them. The office has a window that looks out at the trees. She has, in the past 6 months, filled the bookshelf on the left wall, not with performance, with things she actually uses. The battered calculus textbook with duct tape on the spine sits on the bottom shelf because she likes having it there, because some things you keep not for utility, but for what they mean about where you came from. The duct tape is not embarrassing. The duct tape is the point. On her desk, coffee, black. New thermos, this one with a functioning lid, a gift from Theo when she moved in. She uses it every day. She told him not to spend money on a gift, and he said it's a thermos, not Ia. And she said that's not the point, and he said it kind of is, though, and she couldn't argue with that. In the top drawer of her desk, the folder. Inventory Q3, 92 pages. Still her handwriting. Still the same pencil label on the outside. Not in a supply closet anymore. Not under a cart shelf. In a drawer that belongs to her. In an office with her name on the door. At one of the most significant mathematical research institutions in the world. Folder is the same. The mathematics in it is the same. The only thing that changed is where it lives now. And beside the folder in the drawer, a small frame. $4 from a thrift store on Nassau Street. The kind of store where everything has a history and most of it is benign. Inside the frame, a yellow napkin. Garrett Ashby's handwriting. The derivation that isn't finished. Line 3 crossed out and rewritten the same wrong way. It was always rewritten. She keeps it because it reminds her of two things simultaneously. Someone else gave up on a problem, and she didn't. Under the frame, one paper, Cambridge postmark. Ashby's handwriting, which she recognizes because she emptied his trash can 10 years, and handwriting is a thing you learn when you read enough of it. She read it once, will not read it again, but she remembers what it said. I was wrong about the problem, and I was wrong about you. I am only equipped to apologize for one of them. I suspect you already know which one. She folded it, put it in the drawer, did not respond. Not because she's still angry. She isn't, particularly. Anger at Garrett Ashby would require giving him more of her attention than she currently has available. And her attention is occupied by more interesting things. She didn't respond because some things don't require a response. Some things just need to be put down, and the person who did the harm needs to carry the weight of it themselves, for as long as it takes, without the person they harmed having to manage the process. She has been managing other people's processes for 10 years. She is done. The lecture hall is small. 14 seats in a semicircle. Afternoon light through tall windows, at the particular slant of late October that makes everything amber. The kind of room that has held serious thinking for decades, and has developed its own gravity. Adia stands at the board. Same clothes she has always worn. Dark trousers, a soft sweater, hair in the same bun. Her glasses, same frames, because she liked the frames and the screw fizz fix now. A jeweler on Nassau Street took 20 minutes and charged her $8. She tipped him 12 because the frames matter more than the cost of keeping them. She has not changed to deserve this room. She was always allowed to be in it. She just had to walk through the door. Front row. 3 young women with notebooks open, pens ready. The particular quality of attention that means they arrived early, chose their seats deliberately, and have been waiting for this specific class with a focus that doesn't need to be performed because it's simply real. Second row. 2 doctoral students. One from Johns Hopkins, one who drove up from Philadelphia this morning, both of whom emailed Vivian Strand's office in April after reading the Globe piece and the Annals preprint, asking if they could sit in and were told yes. Front row, far left. The 2 seats Nadia did not assign to students Cora Ellison, 82 years old, dark S, the good one, the one she saves for church and for important things, and she has decided this is both. Hands folded in her lap in the way of someone whose hands have been through enough that stillness is no longer performed, but simply possessed. A small spiral notebook on the desk in front of her, purple cover, bought at a drugstore on the drive up from Atlanta. Beside her, Ruth Ann, 80 years old, green cardigan, sensible shoes. The expression of a woman who identified the best restaurant in Princeton for dinner approximately 40 minutes after arriving in New Jersey, and intends to go there directly after this lecture ends. They drove up together from Atlanta. Ruth Ann's car, Cora navigating. 6 hours with stops, arriving last night, and staying at a hotel near campus that Theo booked for them, because Nadia said she didn't need to do that, and Theo did it anyway. This morning, when they arrived at the Institute, Cora stood outside the building for 3 minutes, just looking at it, not moving, not speaking. Ruth Ann stood on one side of her. Theo, who drove down from Boston this morning, arriving 40 minutes before the lecture, stood on the other. Neither of them said a word. Both of them understood without being told that this was not a moment that needed management. Cora had passed her entrance exam in 1962. She had been told there was no place. She had gone home and taught herself more mathematics and taught her granddaughter on grocery bags. And she had never in 82 years walked through the door of a university lecture hall as someone who was there to learn. She stood outside for 3 minutes. Then she said, "All right," and walked in. How? She is in the front row. She chose it herself. She walked in and looked at the room and sat in the front row without hesitation, the way a person sits down somewhere they have been owed for a very long time, and are not going to pretend otherwise. On the back row, Theo Ellison. Northeastern hoodie, the new one. He chose the back row because he told himself he didn't want to make Nadia nervous. The real reason is he wanted to watch the room watching her. He has been looking forward to exactly this view since he drove back to Boston 2 days after the colloquium and thought about it the entire way home. There is one more person in the room, corner seat, far right, last desk. A young woman, 20, maybe 21, who arrived 8 minutes early and chose the most peripheral seat available. The seat that says, "I'm here but I understand if you didn't notice." The seat that says, "I read about this and I couldn't not come but I'm not sure I'm supposed to be here." Nadia knows that seat. She has sat in every version of it for 10 years. She picks up the marker, writes one word on the board. "Hello." Turns to the room. "Before we start, Shush," she says, "I want to know your names." She looks at the front row women with their notebooks. The doctoral students in the second row. Her brother in the back, Ruth Ann in her green cardigan. Then she looks at her grandmother, Cora Ellison, front row, dark blue dress, purple notebook open on the desk, pen uncapped and ready in her right hand, the same hand that wrote problems on grocery bags on a kitchen table in Atlanta every Saturday morning for years and years and years, sitting in a university lecture hall for the first time in her life, 82 years old, in the front row. Nadia looks at her for a moment that is not long enough to measure by the clock, but is long enough for everything that needs to pass between them to pass. Cora looks back. Expression on Cora's face is not pride exactly. Or it is pride, but it's also older than that. It's the expression of someone who knows exactly what it took to get from a kitchen table in Atlanta to this room, because they know every step of that distance personally, and who is watching the arrival and finding that it is exactly what they always believed it would be. Nadia looks at the corner, far right, last desk, the young woman who chose the seat that says, "I'm not sure I'm supposed to be here." "Let's start with you," Nadia says. She points directly, without hesitation. Not at the front row with pens ready. Not at the doctoral students, at the corner, at the person who arrived early and sat as far from the center as the room would allow. The young woman looks up, eyes wide. The startled expression of someone who has spent enough time making herself small that being seen feels like a mistake. Your name, Nadia says, simply. As though, of course. As though this is the obvious place to begin. The young woman opens her mouth, and her face does something. Something that starts as surprise and moves through something heavier and arrives, slowly, at something that might be, for the first time in this particular room, in this particular chapter of her life, something like permission. She says her name. The whole room hears it. Nadia nods, continues around the semicircle. Each name received. Each person, students. The front row women. Ruth Ann, who says her name with the confidence of someone who has never been confused about who she is. Then Cora Ellison, her grandmother says. Front row. Dark blue dress. Voice steady. You write something on the board. A question. 4 lines. Complex analysis. The kind that looks simple in its initial framing and reveals its actual nature only when you commit to looking from the right angle. The kind that requires you to start from what the problem is actually saying rather than what you assumed it was going to say. The kind that requires you to check line 3. This is where we begin, Nadia says. Not because it's easy, because it's honest. Good mathematics starts with an honest question. Not the question you can defend. Not the question that protects what you already built. She taps the board once. The question that's actually there. She looks at the room. Take your time. I'm not looking for the answer today. I'm looking for how you look at it, the students write. In the front row, Cora Ellison opens her purple notebook to the first page, uncaps her pen, and writes down the question from the board, not because she has to, but because she is 82 years old, and she is in a university lecture hall for the first time, and her granddaughter is at the front of the room. And the question on the board is a real question, and she has never in her life been able to leave a real question alone. She writes it carefully, looks at it, draws a small line underneath, starts to think. The students file out slowly. Some of them linger. The front row women with follow-up questions. The Johns Hopkins doctoral student who wants to talk about the second implication of the problem Nadia put on the board. The young woman from the corner who waits until almost everyone is gone and then approaches quietly and asks, in a voice just above a whisper, whether she's allowed to come back next week even though she's not officially enrolled. Nadia looks at her.
What should, says it. Put you on the list, Nadia says. The young woman nods, walks toward the door, stops her hand on the frame, saying she wants to she has a right to. Nadia waits. I watched the clip, the young woman says.
In April, I watched it 17 times. A pause. I wasn't going to apply to any programs this year. I'd decided I wasn't going to. She looks at the floor briefly, then back up. I applied to 4. Nadia doesn't say anything immediately. Then, good, simple as that. The young woman nods again, goes out the door. Her footsteps down the corridor get quieter and then disappear. Theo is last. He hugs her the way he has been hugging her since he was 12 years old, and she became the person who stayed. Long, his chin on top of her head, not saying anything because he has understood, since he was very young, that his sister does not need the thing you're feeling narrated to her. She knows. She's always known. I'm proud of you, he says eventually, into the top of her head. You're taller than me now and I still haven't adjusted to it. He laughs, real laugh. The one she has been producing in him since he was a kid by saying something precise and slightly sideways at the moment when he needed to laugh. Drive safe, she says. Text me when you're back. Yes, ma'am, he goes. Cora is already in the hall, talking to Ruth Ann, their voices low and continuous in the way of people who have been talking to each other for 60 years and have never run out of things to say. Nadia goes out to them. Cora takes both of Nadia's hands in both of hers and holds them for a moment and doesn't say anything and doesn't need to. Then she pats them once the way she has been patting Nadia's hands since Nadia was 4 years old and says, "We'll see you at Christmas." Yes, you will. I'm going to want to hear about the research. I know. Not the simplified version. The real one. Cora, I still have all my faculties, Nadia. I know you do. Then don't simplify. I wasn't going to. Cora pats her hands one more time. Ruth Ann waves from 6 feet with the energy of a woman who has already identified the best restaurant in Princeton for dinner and intends to go there immediately. They go. Nadia goes back into the lecture hall, stands at the board, looks at what's there, the questions she wrote, the students' notes still visible on their desks from where she's standing, the light through the tall windows now at the particular slant of late October afternoon that makes everything amber. She picks up the eraser, cleans the board, long strokes left to right. The same motion she's made in 1,000 rooms, the same physical gesture, the same arm, the same purposeful efficiency. The rooms have changed, the motion hasn't. Some things stay the same not because nothing has changed, but because they were never broken. She finishes, sets the eraser down, picks up the marker, and writes. Not the first problem from today, not anything from the course materials. Something new. Something she has been turning over for 3 months. An integral that came to her in August, in the first week at Princeton, while she was unpacking the bookshelf and found the calculus textbook with the duct tape, and sat down on the floor and looked at it for 10 minutes, and then picked up a notepad. 3 months of turning it over. She's getting closer. She writes the first line, tilts her head to the left the way she does when she's thinking, the habit she doesn't know she has, reads what's there, writes the second line. Something it shifts when she adds the third line. A door opens, not fully, just a crack. The crack you recognize when you've spent enough time with problems to know the difference between a dead end and a passage you haven't fully explored yet. She writes the fourth line. This is the problem she doesn't know how to solve yet. That's the point. She doesn't know. She has been sitting with the not knowing for 3 months, the same way she sat with Ashby's napkin for one night, and arrived at the proof by morning. Some things take one night, some take longer. The not knowing is not failure. The not knowing is where the actual work lives. She stands at the board in the empty lecture hall. The amber light moves across the floor. She writes another line. In the top drawer of her desk down the hall, the folder, the frame with the yellow napkin, the letter she won't answer, and tucked beneath all of it, pressed flat against the bottom of the drawer, a grocery bag. Brown paper, soft at the folds after 23 years of being carried and unfolded and refolded and kept.
A mathematics problem in pencil on the back, the kind you give a 7-year-old, and at the bottom, in handwriting she has known her entire life.
When you know this one, we'll do the next one.
And the next.
There's no end to them, baby. That's the whole point. There's no end. The marker moves across the board. She doesn't know yet if the problem is solvable. She is going to find out. The light in the room is the color of October at 4 in the afternoon, which is a specific color that only exists for about 3 weeks a year. And she is in it, in this room, at this board, with this problem, and there is nowhere else she is supposed to be. She writes the next line, and the next, and keeps going.